What do you think would happen if a famous person like Ed Sheeran, Jay-Z, or Dave Grohl came forward and announced that they were members of the MGTOW? Put aside for a second how improbable it is that this will actually occur and think about the implications of it happening. Do you believe that it would be a genuine shift, or do you believe that the government, public relations, and mainstream media would get involved quickly enough to skew the message before the status quo could be seriously damaged? What would happen if a famous male celebrity came out and said that he was going to do things his own way? There are two ways to generate social proof for the MGTOW craze by utilizing the influence of celebrities as a source of social proof. Both of these methods can be found in the following sentences. The same thing is happening to the power of celebrities in the 21st century due to the rise of social media. Nowadays, rather than having a few hundred celebrities who are extremely well-known, sites like YouTube are producing thousands of micro-celebrities. These individuals have a much narrower audience appeal. However, this does not mean that they are not famous. They have a strong reputation and a large following among their supporters. I am aware that George Clooney is not a member of MGTOW. However, I believe that for a period of time, everyone hoped that he would join the group. You remember when there were only 12 channels on television. After that, there were 50 or 60 channels, and now there are literally thousands of channels to choose from. We are all aware that celebrities carry a great deal of sway in society. There are approximately 100 major actors and actresses, in addition to singers who frequently capture the attention of the general public. It is more likely that the focus of the future will shift toward micro-celebrities and micro-musicians than it will be on macro-celebrities and macro-musicians. Permit me to now circle back around to the idea of truly famous men going their own separate ways. I believe that Jim Carrey, who is also from Toronto, Canada, is an example of a celebrity who has gradually gone in that direction. Jim Carrey is one of the famous men who has gone their own way. What I find most interesting about Jim Carrey over the past 3 decades is the fact that he was married for 8 years, then divorced, then married for less than a year to Lauren Holly, and after that divorce he was briefly engaged to Renee Zellweger. I find this to be a fascinating aspect of his life. To his good fortune, he was also able to free himself from that commitment and move on. Have you seen any photos of Renee Zellweger that were taken more recently? You won't remember her at all after this point. After that, Carrey started a relationship with Jenny McCarthy that lasted for 5 years. In spite of the fact that they never tied the knot, he is less committed to women after each relationship than he was in the past. It almost seems as if the more commitments he has to other people, the less willing he is to put himself in potentially dangerous circumstances with different women. I'm going to quote a few passages from an article that was published a few months ago titled, "Jim Carrey has no interest in getting married ever again." The author of the article says that he would willfully go that way. When the actor from Dumb and Dumber appeared on the show Howard Stone on a Tuesday morning, the topic of conversation quickly shifted to one about love and romantic partnerships. Carrey responded, "I simply don't see it as necessary at this point," when he was asked if he would ever consider getting married again after his current marriage ended. Carrey responded with, "Yeah, I don't do that," when Howard Stern expressed surprise at the actor's decision to not marry his ex-girlfriend Jenny McCarthy. Stern had been Carrey's longtime girlfriend. "I don't know how I feel if I met someone that would knock my head off," Carrey stated in response to Stone's question about whether or not he would ever consider putting a ring on the perfect female who came along with the 52-year-old celebrity. Carrey said this in response to Stone's question. "Although it's impossible for me to make definite predictions about the future, there's no way in hell that I'd voluntarily go that route." And that, in a nutshell, was Jim Carrey's point all along. Did everybody hear the very last bit at the end about how he was not going to get married again even if the ideal woman came along? Jim Carrey is without a doubt a celebrity. However, if someone like him admits that he will never marry, the majority of women don't seem to mind. This is likely due to the fact that he has passed his prime and is now old enough to be the father of the majority of women in their teens and 20s. However, if someone like Justin Bieber announced that he was going to follow his own path, it would be terrifying for a large number of young teenage girls because it would lower their self-esteem. Keep in mind that the damage that results from a famous guy turning down a woman affects not just the woman in which he was initially interested, but all of the other women as well. They all take it personally because the female collective, and they know that Justin Bieber's rejection of all women would be devastating to the self-esteem of literally millions of young women. The marketing and media apparatus would probably jump right in and say that he was gay or that he had just been badly hurt in a relationship and that he was harmed. It would probably also say that he was harmed. I don't believe that public relations firms or the mainstream media would ever give someone like Justin Bieber the freedom to make his own choices when it comes to his romantic life. Our culture is trying to convince us that the decision to enter and exit a relationship is solely within the purview of women, and the media would almost certainly assume that he was gay if he made such a decision. I believe that Louis Marco doubled the popularity of MGTOW in just 2 months, from the middle of October to the end of December, by proclaiming that he was a guy going his own way. This occurred between the months of October and December. His primary channel is ranked within the top 102 channels in Canada in terms of viewership, and his CU channel receives more than 5 million views on a monthly basis. In my opinion, he is a minor celebrity, and everyone is waiting for a major star such as George Clooney to come along and announce that he will remain a bachelor for the rest of his life. However, he is only a micro-celebrity. Nevertheless, if 3 or 4 additional YouTube micro-celebs in their prime came out and stated that they would never get married and that they were MGTOW and stuck to their guns, the MGTOW would become more important. That would completely change the game. The problem is that many of the men who say they are going their own way will eventually give up and get back into relationships. Those men who say they are going their own way may end up in a marriage or cohabitation relationship in the future. There is nothing that could be more embarrassing than a famous person announcing that they are going their own way, only to get married a few months or even a year later. Feminists in the media would point to this as evidence that men cannot truly be on their own and that going one's own way is not a viable long-term strategy. Additionally, they would argue that going one's own way is not an option. A situation like this one would serve as an excellent illustration of why it is unsafe for men to go out on their own. However, if a well-known male celebrity had his own children through surrogacy rather than marrying and having children the traditional way, it would have a significant impact on the world because it would make surrogacy socially acceptable. For many women, picking me up means they can go out and tell themselves that the male marriage strike is only temporary and that men will return to paying attention to them at any minute. Imagine for a moment that Leonardo DiCaprio chose to go the route of gestational surrogacy in order to start a family. DiCaprio has never followed the norm when it comes to his romantic relationships with the models and actresses he dates, typically for a period of 1 to 2 years at a time before terminating the relationships and beginning to date other people. It sounds like he's using the mayor of MGTOW's method of having a rough endpoint for the relationship and then moving on to the next one. I'm sure it would be bad for Leonardo DiCaprio's career. He came out and said his intentions were simply to date models and never get married. However, it sounds like he might be using this method. I honestly believe that after receiving all of the attention he received while he was still going through the growing pains that he experienced, he came to the conclusion that going his own way was the best way to go. Despite this, the mainstream media has very little to say about his relationships. This is because mainstream media caters to women, and women who watch soap operas tend to enjoy watching tragic relationships. It does not appear that famous guys who go their own way appear in these types of plays, and if they did, it would almost certainly cause a scandal in the mainstream media. However, the mainstream media would almost certainly try to portray any man who declared himself to be an MGTOW as either gay or a misogynist. As was mentioned earlier, women are in charge of the rumor mills in the mainstream media, and these women put in a lot of effort to make sure that women are represented accurately. It is important to keep in mind, when promoting the concept that men can go their own way, that women are required to deny any and all agency at any cost and regardless of what happens in the mainstream media. If a man is married, society values him, but if he isn't, society shames him. Since men are taught that their access to women determines their worth, society values a man who is married. It is the exact opposite of MGTOW, which validates men who are single but devalues those who are in committed relationships. What a unique idea. People who were previously regarded as failures by society tend to experience the exact opposite outcome, obtaining favorable validation in contrast to the individuals whom society deemed to be the winners, who were made to feel ashamed. You understand why married men want to be included in MGTOW and why some people are offended by the fact that certain types of men are being rewarded for their inability to attract and keep women. Do you understand why some people are offended by the fact that certain types of men are being rewarded for their inability to attract and keep women? Being in a relationship is quickly becoming less of a status symbol in favor of the anxiety that comes with the prospect of never being alone again. As a direct consequence of this, single men in relationships may experience feelings of exasperation because they no longer obtain the same level of recognition and prestige as they did when they were in a relationship. Instead, they are made fun of because of something that was once a source of pride for other people. In a battle for their own sense of self-esteem, the married and common law guys face off against the MGTOW.